Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to Scrap Mechanic with Lyte. And today, as promised, I've made a 1-tick resolution stopwatch. It might not be the best 1-tick resolution stopwatch, but it gets the job done. And in fact, I ended up making 2 different versions. Because I had an initial idea, and I worked it out to fruition, and then realized, man, that is not as good an idea as I could have done, and then I made it better. So we'll walk through step by step the process of making the first one, and then talk about the improvements that I made going into the second. Now, you also might notice some difference in the audio quality. If you love it or if you hate it, please let me know. I'm using a different method for doing the recording and post-processing and all that. So if you notice any significant difference, feel free to say so. Now, let's dig right into the logic of this stopwatch. So step 1, we've got this fancy thing right here. We hand it out to stop it. So if we look at this thing, I know this is a mess of wires, but if we look at it, we can see a button going into a not and an and the not is going into the and. So we know from previous episodes that is a 1-tick pulse, which then travels on into a loop of ORs. So what we get is a 1-tick pulse rapidly circling around that loop. And if we just pause it for a moment, there's only one lit. Now, the interesting thing is there are certain situations in which you don't get what you necessarily expect from a loop. So if we set up a NOR loop, so a 3-part NOR loop. So we attach this one turns on, we attach that one stays off, and then we attach this, and it blinks. Now you'll notice it's slower than the 1-tick pulse. Why is it slower than the 1-tick pulse? So if we build ourselves a little thing to visualize what's going on, let's go like so. So around and about. Let's make this one an OR, and then bring it in. It's actually 3-tick pulses. Now, if you happen to know why this leads to 3-tick pulses, let me know. Like, why is it on for 3 ticks? Well, I suppose because it would take 3 pulses to get back to turn this one off. So let's say we start with this one on. This one will be off. And then this one will also be off. But this one being off will turn this one on, which takes a tick. And then this one being on will turn that one off, which will take a tick. So I suppose that's the source of it being on for 3 ticks and then off for 3 ticks. But it's not the behavior I was necessarily expecting when I first discovered this setup. But that is a whole other thing. 3-tick pulses separated by 3-tick gaps is a thing in the past. That's last episode. We are working with single-tick pulses going in a loop. And so we've connected this over to a bunch of ands, and thus, if we press and hold this button, we get a stream of 1-tick pulses, all separated out into 4 different channels, depending on which of the 4 is active at the time, and it loops around and loops around, so you get 4 distinct channels of pulses that go across. You might see where I'm going with this. So we take this entire design, and we shrink it down into just this stuff here. So if we go to the back, oh wait, there is no back. Oh right, because we don't need this right-hand part. It's just the green and the cyan, light blue. So it's just these two. So these will lead to a train of 1-tick pulses, which lead into these 5. So we've got 3 knots, an and an XOR, XNOR. This is our 3-tick pulse generator. So we send our sets of 1-tick pulses into 3-tick pulse generator, which is an extender and limiter. And so when we press and hold this button, we get a series of 3-tick pulses with 1 gap between them, which is very easy to visualize, which is part of why I like this setup. You can see the train of 3-tick pulses offset by 1 each. Well, why do we need 3-tick pulses? Well, we need them for flip-flops, because flip-flops need 3-tick pulses. So we've got a NOT, and an XOR. The ANDs are for doing the binary counting, but still, not, yeah, let's get it right. Not XOR is for flipping and flopping. So here we are with a 22-tick pulse, just because. I mean, it could be any length pulse, but this is our pulse generator. So this will make a 22-tick pulse. Shove it through these ANDs with this cycle to split it into 4 channels. And bam! We now have 22 ticks split among 4 different channels. So this channel counted to 6. This channel only counted to 5. So 5 plus 6 is 11, plus 6 plus 5, 22 total. This red button clears it out, so we can try it again. This time we got 6, 6, 5, and 5. Because this is going, and you have no idea which cycle you're going to catch it on, so which of these comes out, which it changes, but the sum stays the same. So we've got separated into 4 channels, turned into 3 ticks, counted up in binary. So we now have 4 binary numbers, oops, we didn't reset, that total the number of ticks of our timer. So let's say we changed it to 29. So we now have, so it's 1, 2, and 4. So this is 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 1. So 28 plus 1 is 29. Brilliant. Now what do we do with these? We add them up, like we just did in our head. We looked at them, we got numbers, we add them up. But in 4 channels, it's no good. Adding all of that up in your head, that's no good. So we implemented some arithmetic. So we take the orange ones and we add them together. This is very easy to add. 1 plus 0 is 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. Hey look, a 1, 1, 1, 1. This one, it's a little more difficult. 1 plus 1 is 2, but we don't want to work with 2, so we have to carry a 1. So we carry the 1, this becomes 0, 0. So we have a carried 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1, carry the 1. So we've got 1, we carry another 1. So we're carrying a 1, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1, carry the 1. So we carried the 1 down the line. So we're here, carry the 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. Now, I walked you through the addition, not because you don't know how to do addition. You know how to do addition, but you might not have done it in binary. And you carry the 1 in binary just like you carry the 1 in anything else. Decimal, hexadecimal, anything. You carry things over just the same way. Now, how do you do it in logic? Because that's what this is doing. This is adding the 2 oranges, adding the 2 pinks, using these gates. Now, I added a couple of buttons that stand in for zeros because you don't carry anything into it. This row is the carry. So these ORs are the carry. You start off with no carry. You never carry anything before you've got numbers. Now, there are two potential sources of carrying a number over. Either the two things you're adding are both 1. So that, if you follow these up, is here. The digits here are both 1, is one of the conditions. Both 1 comes in here, comes down to the carry, pushes forward to the next digit. Okay? What other way can you get a number to carry over? Well, that's if you've already carried a 1 and one of these two is a 1. So right here, one of these is a 1. If you had carried something before, then you'd have to carry it again. So that's this and that OR. Well, I kind of skipped over this XOR, which was necessary for this carrying AND. Because how do you know whether or not there's just one of these lit? One of these lit is XOR. If they are both blank, no. That's no good. If they're both lit, no, that's also not good. This is not the sort of thing where you have just one lit. So XOR is true for this, true for that, false, and false. That's how you tell before you check the carry if you've got a 1. So here, you would have a 1. If there was a carry, then you wouldn't. So here, we've got this XOR, which combines this XOR and the carry. So do you have just one? XOR the carry. So if you carried it over, this one would be false. If you carried here, it's true. Do you follow? XOR here is false because you have 2 that are lit. Ooh, no good. XOR here with a carry, 3 lit, is true. XOR is even or odd. Odd is on, even is off. I really need to get more consistent with saying true, false, on, off. So that's how you add a single column. The carry goes to these 2 places. You've got a lot of things just mixing together where you've got the ANDs into the OR and the XOR and the carry into the XOR. Carries push forward. There are plenty of diagrams of this on the internet. I hope I've described the process well enough that you could figure out where things need to go. If you need to spread these out, spread them out by all means. But when you add digits, you don't add complexity. All you do is take the same setup from this first column and push it over one. You got the same carry doing the same thing. That's why I have this here, such that the first column isn't different from all the rest. You just have a 0 carry. You could simplify it. You can get rid of gates, you can get rid of this, and simplify this part to use fewer blocks. But for consistency and pedagogy purposes, we leave it in. So as you add digits, you just copy the same sort of web over, and that's all there is. This line here and this line here are the outputs. So this is the output of adding these 2. This is the output of adding those 2. But now we still have 2 numbers, so we do it again. This is the sum of these 2. Can look at this. You've got the ANDs across the bottom going to those 2 digits. You've got these XORs going to those 2 digits. And everything else is contained in here. Carry, 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 so on down the line. And I have a reversed input for the people who read binary the way binary would be written. I'm a proceduralist. I build this in the direction of the flow of information from left to right. As I add more digits, it pushes further to the right. But when you write it math-wise, you put the 1s place the 2s, the 4s, the 8s, and the 16s. So, reading this number, you've got a 1, no 2, 4, 8, and 16. 16 and 4 is 20, 8, 9. And 29 is what we were working with here. 26, plus 3. If you haven't watched my episode on the delays involved in these, you might want to go back to that. The timer itself has 2, this gate has 1, thus you add 3 to this stated tick delay, and that's what you get over here. Now you might have noticed early on, there's a fundamental flaw in this design. Right over here, when you hold this down, you've got an empty space. And the flip-flops don't need that empty space. Pedagogically, it's good to see it. Testing-wise, it's good to see it. Because without that empty space, it just looks like it's on all the time. And there's only a difference among them at the beginning and the end. It's not great for pedagogy and for testing. But for efficiency, it's great because you don't need 4 of these numbers. You don't need 3 adders. You only need 2 channels and then 2 adders. And so over here, we've got the improved model. It just has the 3 channels. This one has 8-bit arithmetic. So in 8 bits, you can count up to 255. So this entire thing can count up past 750. Divide that by 4. You've got a decent number of, divided by 40, mind you. And you've got a decent number of seconds that you can work with this timer. Then you take the top 2 and add them together, and then take this and add it to the bottom one, et voila, you have a result. But you'll also notice over here, these are 4-bit numbers, which add together to potentially be 5-bit numbers, which add together to potentially be 6-bit numbers. Whenever you add numbers together, you want to make sure you've got enough bits to hold them all. And a decent rule of thumb is every time you add another number, add another bit. If you've got a nice layout like this, you only add a bit for these and then add a bit after. Here, we're doing 8, 9, and then 10. Didn't check whether it was absolutely necessary to have 10 bits at the end, but it's really not bad. So for these, I put the logic for the flipping and flopping in the back. I left the adders out front so you can see the magic happen. And yes, there's a sensor down there. And the red button just goes into the knots out front, so you can just press it and reset everything. So to show the single tick resolution, we come over here and we've got 2 sensors set up in switch distance 1 sound off, such that we can just go boom, and see that it takes 4 ticks for this block to pass essentially 1 block after having already fallen half a block. Let's clear this and look at that again. Because this doesn't trigger until the block is about halfway through. Watch very closely. It has to be significantly in front of that switch before, sensor, before it'll trigger it. But it doesn't have a lot of time to accelerate, so it takes 4 ticks to cross. And you can see 1, 2, and 1 is 4. But that's 4 tick. I could be causing some sort of weird phenomenon. So let's clear that out. We've put it up here, and then we drop it. Ooh, that only took 2 ticks. Progress. But then there's a weird phenomenon, which hopefully I'll be able to replicate, where I get rid of this from 1 block higher, and it took 3 ticks. That's right, 3. It takes 4 from here. Very clearly 4. Come on. From here, it only takes 2. 1, 2. And yet, from higher up, where it accelerates more, it takes more time. It takes 3. That's such a weird thing. Don't know what causes it just yet, but it's worth investigating. And if we take it all the way up, and drop it from there. Zoop. Flies right through, takes a single tick to go on through. Now this is the level of speed that I need for doing these physics calculations. I need 1 tick measurements. I might need something even better because I might need to spread these apart and see how far something can travel in 1 tick. My goodness. But it's a nice, accurate stopwatch. And I set up a little other thing here to show that not only does it... Oh, what happened? That was weird. I might have not pressed the button long enough. Yeah, I need a better reset switch than that. But it also has a lot of bits of resolution. So if I want it to take a while to measure something, it can do it accurately over a long span of time. Off we go, and it starts counting, and there it stops. And so you can see, in all its glory, how long it took me to walk from there to there. So we'll be able to measure my character's walking speed. And so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. So 64 plus 3 is 67, plus 8 is 75. I think that's 75. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. 64 plus 8 is 72, plus 3 is 75. So it took me 75 ticks to go from there to there, which is 5 ticks shy of 2 seconds. Because as we know from over here, you've got 40 ticks in each second. So we'll clear that out. And there you are. So I'm not certain how much more one could optimize this, and I'm not sure I really want to. I have a feeling I'm just going to take this logic and strap it to a chassis such that it can drive around, put these sensors on extendable and rotatable arms such that I can configure them in whatever shape I want, and then I can do testing on how things are affected by gravity, how fast engines move, how fast the player walks, whether or not a player walks faster down an incline. There are all sorts of things we could then measure once we have this compactified and thrown on something that can do anything you really need. So if you've got any questions on how any of these components work, feel free to ask. Otherwise, the next episode will not be making that fancy thing. The next episode will likely revisit one of the topics from an earlier episode, just in light of the developments of this logic. But that's all I've got for this episode. So I will see you in the next episode of Scrap Mechanic with Lyte.